right, strap in, everyone. Today's deep dive is going to be intense.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking Specialist 5, Dennis M. Fujii, Medal of Honor recipient. And we're not just, listing off accomplishments.
Right.
We're going to try to experience, live through the days that earned him that honor.
I like it.
Specifically, a few days in February 1971, Vietnam War.
See, now that's what I'm talking about. It's one thing to read about the Medal of Honor,
Yeah.
but to really understand the situations where it's awarded,
Totally.
it just hits different. And remember, it's given for, and I'm quoting here, conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty.
Woo, that's a mouthful.
Right. Talk about going above and beyond.
Okay, so Fujii, where'd he come from? Hanapepe, Kauai, Hawaii. Enlists in the Army, 1968. February 1971 rolls around. He's on his second tour in Vietnam. Now he's a crew chief on a medivac helicopter.
Medivac. Those are the dust-off crews, right?
Once flying straight into hot zones to pull out wounded soldiers.
Man, can you imagine the pressure on those guys?
Yeah.
Every second counts.
No kidding. And on February 18th, things go very, very wrong. During a rescue mission in Laos, Fujii's helicopter gets hit. Enemy fire. Crashes. He's injured.
Wow. So you'd think in that situation, any soldier's just going to get me out of here, right?
Yeah.
But no, not Fujii. A second helicopter shows up to get him and he waves them off.
Seriously, why?
Too dangerous. Didn't want to risk their lives. He knew the landing zone was still too hot.
So now he's the only American on the ground.
Injured. Surrounded by wounded South Vietnamese allies. Think about that.
He must have been terrified. But he doesn't give up, does he?
Nope. For the next 17 hours, he's on the radio, directing airstrikes.
Yeah.
Guiding American air power to protect himself and those wounded soldiers.
17 hours.
Under constant enemy fire, he's shifting positions, calling in support.
Wait, so he wasn't just hiding?
Oh, he was fighting back too. Even laid down suppressive fire when they got too close. You know what that says, right? Basically, raining bullets to keep the enemy pinned down.
That's incredible. So he's directing airstrikes, returning fire, all while taking care of the wounded.
And don't forget, communicating with American forces. He was using the call sign Papa Whiskey.
Papa Whiskey.
President Biden actually mentioned that in his speech honoring Fujii. Said on the radio, his fellow Americans knew him as Papa Whiskey, clear-eyed, level-headed soldier directing airstrikes so precisely.
Wow. So even in the middle of all that chaos, he's this calm, strategic thinker.
It's like textbook resilience and leadership under fire.
And it wasn't just skills, right? This is a guy who deeply cared about the people around him.
Absolutely. And you know what? The story doesn't end there. On February 20th, he finally gets a chance to be extracted. But yeah, you'd think that'd be it, right?
Yeah.
Like heroic escape, end of story. But we're talking about Dennis Fujii here.
Right. So what happens?
The rescue chopper, it gets hit too.
No way.
Enemy fire, forced to crash land. About 4 kilometers away.
You gotta be kidding me. Can you imagine that feeling? Like finally you're safe and then bam, right back to square one.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's just it, right? This is resilience in action. He could have just, given up. He didn't. He ends up spending 2 more days at the Allied camp.
So it's not over yet.
Nope. Finally gets evacuated on February 22nd.
Okay, so let me get this straight. 4 days of intense combat, 2 helicopter crashes, constant enemy fire.
Exactly.
And this guy never, wavered. His commitment to the mission, to his fellow soldiers, just, wow.
It's a pretty remarkable story.
Yeah.
And what I think is so fascinating here is that it's not just about, bravery in the heat of the moment.
Right.
This is sustained courage, quick thinking, an incredible ability to adapt because things were changing constantly.
I mean, it really makes you wonder, how did he stay so focused, so determined with everything going on around him?
Well, I think part of it has to be his training, right?
Yeah.
His experience as a crew chief. These roles, they demand a high level of technical skill.
Sure.
But they also instill the deep sense of responsibility for the well-being of others.
So it's not just knowing how to do your job, it's also that mental, emotional preparedness, being able to handle the pressure.
Exactly. And this is something we can all learn from. I mean, most of us will never see combat,
Right.
but we all face situations that demand courage, resilience, leadership.
Yeah, I can see that.
Think about it. A tough project at work, a personal crisis, standing up for what you believe in, even when it's hard. There are echoes of Fujii's story in all our lives.
That's a good point. It's not always about these big dramatic moments, right?
It's about those everyday choices.
Pushing through fear, taking responsibility for yourself and for others. That's where the real impact of Fujii's story is.
Because it reminds us that heroism, it's not limited to like extraordinary individuals and extraordinary situations.
It's something we all have inside us.
Exactly. And that's a powerful thought. So as we start wrapping up this deep dive, let's think about what we've learned. We've seen the incredible courage of Specialist 5 Dennis Fujii. Yeah, but we've also seen how those qualities, they're rooted in preparation, in training.
Yeah.
And this brings us to, I think, a crucial question. How can we apply these lessons to our own lives? How can we, all of us, cultivate that same sense of courage, that same unwavering commitment to doing what's right, even when it's hard? It really is a powerful question.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how can we do that? Because let's be real, most of us, we're never going to face a life or death situation like Fujii did.
True. But we all have our own stuff to deal with, challenges to overcome.
Exactly. And I think his story gives us like a framework, you know, a way to approach those challenges with courage and with resilience. And it all starts with recognizing that preparation, it's not just about physical skills.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It's going to be mental and emotional too, right?
So, like, being able to stay calm when things get crazy, to think clearly, make good decisions, even under pressure.
That's it. And it's also about, you know, cultivating that sense of responsibility, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us. Because you see, real courage, it often shows up when we put others' needs before our own.
Yeah, like when Fujii waved off that rescue helicopter, even though it meant he had to stay in that dangerous situation.
Exactly. He knew it was the safest choice for the crew.
Yeah.
And that right there, that's selflessness. That's putting the well-being of others first. And that's what real leadership is all about.
And that's something we can all try to do, right? I mean, no matter what our job is or, you know, what position we hold. Because leadership, it's not about power. It's about taking responsibility and inspiring others to do the same.
And, you know, what's really cool about Fujii's story is that it reminds us that heroism, it doesn't have to be this big, dramatic thing.
Right.
It can be found in those little moments of courage, the everyday choices we make to do the right thing, even when it's tough.
So like those small acts of, I don't know, resilience, perseverance, you know, standing up for what you believe in, even when people doubt you.
Yes. And at the end of the day, it's about realizing that we all have the potential for heroism inside of us. Fujii's story is a reminder that we can all do extraordinary things, even when faced with huge challenges.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the life of Specialist 5 Dennis Fujii, let's try to carry his legacy forward. Let's take those qualities, the courage, the resilience, the leadership, and apply them to our own lives.
Yeah, let's all try to be a little braver, a little bit more resilient, and a little more willing to lead by example. Because let's face it, the world can be a crazy place.
Yeah.
And those are the things that will make a real difference.
And you never know, maybe we'll inspire other people to do the same.